Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast.
Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here again with another edition of Oilers Live Tuesday. I was thinking this week was going to be a bit of a slow week, but Holland presser today, lots to talk about. Twitter's gone crazy. Lots of, I don't know if we're going to call them good things or bad things, but lots of things to talk about. So I've got a couple of the guys from the Heavy Hockey crew on tonight. I got Ryan Lotsberg. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, everyone.
And I've got Mr. Mike Dursa, Mega Thread Mike Dursa from Straight Off the Pipe. Welcome, Mike. So, we're not going to be out here. We're not going to be here long tonight. There's we've got a little bit of time before the next game. But we're going to talk about, of course, Ken Holland's presser today. We've talked a ton about the Oilers slump. Some of that's going to come into conversation today, but I think, the probably the biggest thing on the radar today is Evander Kane. And so some people, Tim Peel, and I think it's a real account as far as I can tell, Tim Peel suggesting that the Oilers are very close to signing Evander Kane for a $1.5 million contract, I think is what he reported. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that part's made up. But it sounds like Tim Peel thinks Evander Kane's going to be an Oiler within the next 24, 48 hours. Guys, first off, let's start. Ryan, welcome. Your thoughts on Evander Kane? Would you sign him? And we don't know for sure. He could be signed with the Oilers. We don't know. That part is up in the air. I guess the big question is, would you sign him?
I've honestly been going kind of back and forth on this over the last little while here. And obviously, fantastic hockey player that would check a lot of boxes for us. But with Evander Kane, the dilemma comes with the off-ice stuff. Now, I don't care about the gambling. That was his own dumb fault, right? For me, it's the sexual assault allegations, which charges were dropped both times, but I'm on the fence of whether he should be allowed to play again or not. And I would understand either outcome, to be totally honest. Like, you go back to 2016, the charges against him were dropped. You go back to his ex-wife, those charges against him were dropped as well. But it's like, where's the standard? Jake Virtanen's not playing hockey right now because of allegations against him, which could very well be true or not. And if that's the standard, then he shouldn't be playing hockey, and neither should Patrick Kane in that case, right? Like, I'm sure there's lots of other players out there too with a history. Yeah,
you know what? Great points. I'll get you to weigh in on it, Dursa, and then I'll give you my thoughts on it.
I guess from a hockey standpoint, we've been looking for like a Matthew Tkachuk, Brad Marchand, gritty, edgy, not fun to play against kind of player for a long time. So, on that part of it, I'm on board, but there's definitely some character question marks, to say the least, when it comes to this guy. I don't think it's up to me to make a moral, decision on a player. I think that's up to an organization or the league. So I don't even want to touch that. I remember, Kobe Bryant went through a whole rape trial, and Allen Iverson said during that, you guys think he's all, he's this white knight that rides in on this white horse. Kind of funny because Kobe's obviously was a black person, but and then he said there's nobody that's squeaky clean. So everybody has a past, but and this organization has taken people in the past, like Craig McTavish, that got into trouble. But I think the difference between Craig and maybe Evander Kane is Craig wanted to change his life. But the Oilers didn't know that when they picked him up, and so they're in the same spot when it comes to this kind of situation. They don't know if Kane wants to turn it around or not. I think it's wishful thinking, and I think it was wishful thinking back then. Back then it worked out. Back then it was kind of before the internet and Twitter, and everybody couldn't dissect the move. They just had to accept it, and it was what it was. I mean, we can look at it a million different ways now, and who's to say who's right, who's wrong. And I think those decisions get made, and there's not much we as fans can do other than accept it or reject it. You can walk away, as a fan of the organization if you want to, or you can stay on board and see how it works out. And I think that's where I'm at. I hope it works out. I'd love a good redemption story of a guy, but I'm not convinced that's what we're in for here with him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, good points. Good points. I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions as we go. I'll give you my thoughts first, but you're right. There's a couple of X allegations, none of them proven as yet, or and I think charges have been dropped in both. I think with if we're just talking about hockey in general, Rick Westhead just released another article about a couple of off-ice officials and some racism and sexual assault allegations that happened in NHL rinks. Of course, we had the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, this is a sport that fights with image. It's seemingly every day in recent months, especially this year, and we've got a player that a team finally, I think does the right thing and goes to terminate a contract, and then you know what? I mean, nobody's learned anything. Everybody seems to be lining up at the door to sign this guy, right? I mean, we're talking what, a day since his contract was terminated, and they're expecting to make a call within 48 hours on him lining up somewhere. So, I mean, this is look, if we sign him, if the Oilers sign him, they do it at their peril. There's ample evidence that this guy hasn't been good in the locker room. There's the Bufflin middle finger pointed at him. There's an article written about every time he's left an organization about how his teammates were happy to see him go. Right? Like this is not a guy that's well liked in the room. I'll tell you this, when he was in Buffalo, I've had a chance to watch a few Buffalo games live in Buffalo, in Calgary, in Edmonton. At the time, I went and I did some special attention on Kane, because I remember, when he's good, he's good. He's a talent. Let's be real. The guy is a talented hockey player, right? He's got talent. He's got more hockey talent in his pinky finger than most of us have. But, I watched him on the ice in pregame. I watched him, warm up. He doesn't skate with the other guys. Like, nobody's talking to him, right? He, he just seems disinterested, right? And look, I've read some things from his agent that the guy has this willingness to compete and to win. But, I've left games waiting to see like an Evander Kane that I thought might light it up a little bit, and I just left wanting. Like there was nothing there, right? Like the guy's got talent, but it depends on whether he comes out that given night or how he plays, right? And so, look, he's played 5 AHL games this year, right? That's it. And we're expecting him to, if the Oilers sign him, they're expecting him to come in and contribute in an all-in year, and we'll get to that too. So, this is in my mind. I mean, this is, I just put out a tweet, Ken Holland says, I believe in second chances, right? Well, this is not a second chance anymore. We're talking third, fourth, fifth chance for this guy, right? And he's not going to learn until somebody makes him learn. And the Sharks finally have, a little bit of wherewithal to maybe give him that chance to take something from it. He's not going to learn. You talk about Craig McTavish. That's a completely different story. He did time for that, right? He did time. The family of the young girl that died by his driving, they continued to visit him in court. It's not in court while he was in jail, or talked to him at least, and he did a lot to come around from that. Cassian's put in the effort and the work, right? We know his troubles, but Evander Kane's 48 hours out of a contract termination. I don't think 2 days ago he had some revelation that said, "Look, I'm going to be a better person about this." What's happened is 2 days later he's got a revelation that it doesn't give a shit what matters, right? Because somebody's going to give me a contract, right? Somebody's going to give me a contract. I wish I had that type of, capability that I could do whatever the hell I want, and then somebody will still give me a contract. It doesn't work that way normally, but apparently it works in hockey, and I think it's a piece of shit move if the Oilers or anybody signs him. The guy needs to take some time off of hockey, learn how to live his life properly. I'm all for people getting all the chances they need, but at some point the lesson's got to be served, and he's not served it yet, right? He sat out for a bit. This is his chance, and you know what? This is a fragile team right now in a slump. Do we want another guy that changes the dynamic there? I don't know. Anyway, that's my rant.
Michael, the real lesson will come if the grievance that is filed gets turned down, and he's out that money from San Jose and has to take like a $5 million pay cut.
The grievance will be turned down. Like 100%, it's going to be turned down. I don't see it standing, right? Like, I mean, he's had enough problems. This is not something that San Jose came by lightly, right? The Players Association has to file a grievance, right? The NHL supported the termination, right? And these
arbitrator might decide that he's entitled to half of his money. So if he's not out the whole thing, I don't think he learns much.
Yeah, he's still going through bankruptcy right now, right? So you know what? Hey, look, I want Evander Kane to clean his life up, right? I mean, I know personally from somebody who's I've suffered personally from addictions, and I needed a second chance, right? Just like Cassian, just like anybody. I did some shit back in the day, I needed a second chance. But it wasn't until somebody said, get the fuck out of here, basically, before I did something about it, right? Until I was, knocking at the door of the food bank, or trying to figure out where I was going to live next before I, that's like there's a come to Jesus moment, right?
Right.
And he's not had it.
Kane needs to come to the realization that I'm not who I profess to be in my own mind.
Yeah.
I need help.
Yeah, and look, I want him to get help. Hey, look, we've got Lars on Facebook. Thanks for tuning in, Lars. Says if he signed in Edmonton, thank God it's not. Thank Odin is what he says. It wasn't in Calgary. Chucky and that prick on a line, that'd be terrible to deal with. Shannon, if Mike Tyson can become what he is today with society and with his social media success, then Kane deserves a shot. Cass turned around things here, and Mac T. We aren't giving up pieces to get him, so try it. I don't disagree, Shannon. I'm just saying now's not the time. Lars, yeah, same thing. Long time ago, people said nasty things about Cassian. Yeah. So look, that's my opinion on it. I mean, this guy, we're not teaching him anything. There's no second chance here. I mean, he hasn't even had like you're not giving him anything. You're not punishing him. So as far as we're concerned, it's not a second chance because he hasn't broken any rules because he's continuing to go on with his life.
And ultimately, like, he's not going to make his life better if he doesn't care. Like, you were talking about his attitude in warm-ups in Buffalo and like looking disinterested. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the picture of him in a club recently. Like, he looked like he didn't want to be there either, right? And with Cassian, like, he's had a lot of great things happen in his life too. Like, he worked to get over his addiction problem. He's got a wife and a kid now. Evander's had a wife and a kid too, and he's apparently treated them like shit too. Like, none of that stuff has seemed to trigger him into that come to Jesus moment, right? And I don't know that this will either, because like you say, he's not losing all of his money. He's going to lose some of his money, but not all of it. And someone's giving him a contract within 48 hours because he's a talented hockey player, and this is professional sports. That's just the reality. Nobody
take the year off, right? Take the year off. Go get yourself better. Like that would be a good thing for him to do. You know what the grievance should be by the NHLPA? It should be that this guy isn't going through mandatory counseling, right? Like that nobody's reaching out to this guy to make sure that he gets better. Because I don't think there's anybody in that circle around San Jose right now that would say this is a healthy individual. In fact, he was unhealthy enough that they terminated his contract. Just whatever it was, 48 hours ago. We'll go with 48 hours. They terminated his contract. Shit hasn't changed in that time, right? Like,
no, you're totally right. Yeah. It hasn't.
I don't know what
Jason Gregor. Yeah. Go ahead. Gregor actually brought up that if the Oilers bring him in, counseling should be a part of the contract stipulation.
Well, damn right it should be. I mean, okay, maybe if that's the case, then sure. Mark Spector, who we don't always agree with here, he says some things, but he said he wouldn't touch him, right? And Mark, you know what I love about Mark is he tells it like he sees it, right? But look, I get it. Oilers fans are dying to win. They're dying to win right now. I am too, right? Like, nothing I want more than this team to get out of this slump and get into the playoffs and win a round. And listening to Ken Holland certainly didn't give me like the warm and fuzzies today. That's that's even in the works. We're going to talk about that. But Evander Kane, look, this is, I know everybody, Shannon, Lars, those on Facebook, people watching, people that think that Evander Kane's a good idea. They're saying we don't have to give anything up to get there. Well, here's the other thing. We're not giving anything up. Ken Holland said that today. So don't, that's not happening for anybody. But just because something's there, right? Just because it's there doesn't mean you need to take it. Right. And that's got to be, it's the same logic that people are using, with the keep Tippett, mantra. Some of these people are saying, let's keep Tippett and hire Evander Kane. Right. Like, you know what? Just because it's, an option doesn't mean you have to take it. All right, guys. You know what? I did my rant. You know what I feel about if it's not obvious. All right. Ryan, did you get a chance to listen to the presser today?
I just caught it a little while ago, but yeah.
Okay, and Dursa, same?
Yeah, it felt like Jason Strudwig's general manager talks that he has on the Gregor show, where you just draft and develop, and that's the way you go about your business. That's what I got out of that. I think we're a little far into Connor's career to be patient. And sit and wait, and it just, it doesn't jive with the all in kind of talk.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Okay. Here's the thing. So he was asked I can't remember who asked it, but the question was asked if he was planning on going all in. Now, maybe Ryan, would start with you. Ken Holland's response, quite emphatically, was, "Hey, look, guys, we're all in right now. I mean, I'm spending to the cap. In fact, I might be over the cap."
There's no might about it. He is over the cap.
Yeah, and and he said, "I'm all in. I'm all in right now. This is what we got." Right? The answer is, in the locker room, was another comment he specifically said. So your thoughts? I mean, is this, first off, are you comfortable with that? Is this the team that's taking us to the promised land in the next year or two? What's your gut tell you about what he said? How's this all going to play out for the Oilers in your mind?
Yeah, so I'm sure I'm going to be in the minority of this in this, but I'm really not concerned about this at all. I like his approach. I like the management style of being patient. I think we're dealing with two different definitions of all in here, because Holland was quite aggressive in making a lot of changes in the offseason. Like he listed off bringing in the Fogle deal, bringing in Zach Hyman, bringing in Cody Ceci. Like the defense looks a lot different today than it did at this time last year. And the forward groups, like the top six got stronger. The bottom six, it's supposedly got deeper, but we're not seeing those results yet.
Yeah.
Now, Daniel Nugent-Bowman, who's asking that question, he's saying all in means trading your top picks and prospects for immediate help. Right? And Holland says, no, I would not do that for a rental, which I agree with. I don't know why you would do that for a rental. It might be different if the team was first, second, third in the league and the Stanley Cup was an expectation.
Yeah, good point.
Right? But that's not where we sit. We are sitting middle of the pack, had a hot start and a horrid December, right? So middle of the pack, I'm not giving up firsts and top prospects just for that little 2 months of a player, only to have him walk away in the summer. The other thing we have to consider too is, like you brought it up, we're in year 6, 7 of Connor McDavid now. Leon's a year older. But we have to think about life past the expiration date of that contract. Now, I'm not thinking about Connor and Leon leaving. I'm thinking about them sticking around and making more money than what they're making right now. Right? The salary cap situation is tough enough with the amount they're making right now. But Connor's going to earn a raise. Leon's going to earn a raise. Right? I don't know how much the cap's going up in the next handful of years. Probably not by much. There's supposed to be a jump based on the new TV deal in Seattle eventually. But the pandemic's put a stop to that. So you need a constant stream of young, talented, cheap players coming through. That's how Pittsburgh's been as competitive as they've been for all these years with Sid, right? It's good prospects, value contracts, and you need to draft those and you need to develop them. So trading them all in every year, like the Nugent-Bowman idea of all in every year, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. No, you know what? Fair points. Absolutely fair points. Mike, your thoughts on it?
I just think the wording of all in kind of got everybody, okay, this is the year, we're going for it. And then they get into a bit of a slump and, you pull back some of them poker chips because you realize that, well, maybe we shouldn't be all in right now. And I think that's an intelligent way to go about it. I think Chiarelli would have been the opposite. If he said all in, he's going all in, and he would have gambled, the future for right now and probably missed the playoffs completely. So, I'm okay with him pulling back a little bit, but I think if there's deals out there to improve the club, I can't see him shying away from it. I don't think I'm trading first round picks for a rental at this juncture of the season either. I'm not even sure you do that at the deadline. The thing that was a bit concerning though is the Stuart Skinner part of what he was saying there. It seemed to me that Tippett was done with Koskinen after that post-game press conference. So why wouldn't you get Skinner here now? He's on a heater, and
Yeah, we'll get to the Skinner piece, but because that's a whole different conversation as well. Another part of what Holland was talking about. The all-in, you know what? Great, Ryan. Great points, Mike. Good points. My biggest challenge is this, and I like Holland. In fact, you know what? None of what he said surprises me today, right? Like and if it did, you just haven't been listening, right? Like because this is Holland. Like he is the epitome of patience, right? But what I don't like is, we're up against the wall. We're clearly, we're clearly not good enough. In fact, I would say December, while it should be a blip, does put the playoffs in jeopardy for us, right? And it shows that the playoffs are potentially a jeopardy situation, right? Like if Smith gets injured one more time, well, Skinner's up, right? But look, he was asked in a couple of different ways, like what's the tipping point for you, right? Like we're asking you today, is it fire Tippett? Is it, make a trade? Like what's the tipping point for you? Is it bring up Skinner as we'll talk about, Mike? And Holland didn't have an answer, right? Like this is the team. Doesn't matter. We're going to go until we can't go anymore, till we're looking up in the standings. And we're looking at a playoff spot. And if we miss the playoffs this year, that's, and it's possible. Guys, like maybe in October and November, we didn't think it was possible, but you're damn right it's possible. Right? Like there are people that are, like Anaheim's doing way better than anybody expected, right? And so you got to factor in those teams that are above you that you didn't factor in at the beginning of the year, right? And so look, I think this team will make the playoffs. I'm not saying they're not going to, but that's what scares me about being all in or not is you have to be prepared to make some moves. And he clearly today doesn't sound like he says every time he's got a presser, he says, "Yeah, I'm working the phones." He's been working the phones for 20 years now and hasn't made more than 10 trades, right? Like, I listed off all of the trades that he's made, and it's he's a developer. He doesn't make a team by way of trade. Look, 10 years from now, when we win a Stanley Cup, we'll all be happy that we had Ken Holland. We'll have to celebrate him then, because it's probably not going to be in the next couple of years. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. All right, let's talk about, Mike. You wanted to. I'll let you go first on this, because this was Holland's words today were asked about Stuart Skinner. He basically said, "Look, Skinner's doing well in Bakersfield. He's getting some time there. I'm going to run with Koskinen and Smith." I think if you go into Oilers fandom, probably Skinner's one of the big things that everybody's asking for. If you're not going to trade for a goalie, we've got one that seems to be playing better than your second string. Why not bring him up? So, Mike, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I feel like Skinner was good when he was here, and he's doing just fine. Down in Bakersfield, and it felt like that Tippett basically ran Koskinen out of town. Hearing Holland's presser today and what he was saying, it was almost like he was building him back up, feeling like he needed another veteran guy, to back up Smith. And maybe there's some truth to that. I don't know, but I think Skinner's played well enough, and his numbers when he was here were better than everybody, in limited time, but how much time has Smith actually played this year either? So I think he kind of deserves to be here, but that's just doesn't seem like it's going to be the case. Although I'm kind of curious as to whether or not Tippett's going to give Koskinen another start. That's what I
Tippett will give. Oh, you know why? Because he'll have to. Because something will happen with Smith, right? He won't have the choice. In other news, by the way, Stalock looks like he's been cleared to go play in Bakersfield. So that's a little bit more to add to that. We got to think he's a long ways off, but perhaps, maybe playoffs. Who knows? That's why we got him, was a bubble guy, right? Who's never played. Ryan, your thoughts on this? Like, first off, I mean, would you bring Skinner up? You think Holland's good? I mean, you made some good points, right? This is what, if you hire a guy like Holland, this is exactly what you want from him, right? But
Yep.
yeah, is he making the right choices here, or would you bring Skinner up?
Well, just like any other prospect, the idea with Holland is to let them be overripe, right?
He said that today, right? He said maybe he'll be there too long, but I'd rather that than not long enough, right?
That's exactly right. Now, the only reason Skinner was ever up here is because Mike Smith was hurt. And I think that's the only reason that he would be up here again at some point this season, is if Mike Smith is hurt. The issue is Mikko Koskinen having to play the amount of games that he's had to play. I was having an argument with a buddy of mine. He hates Koskinen, right? But
not many people love Koskinen.
Not many people love him. I'm not saying that I do by any stretch, but he's good in small doses.
Yeah.
Right? If you give him a couple starts here or there, he's fine. But if we've seen it too many times before, if there's an extended stretch where he has to be the guy, he's not going to succeed. Right? Like, we can't keep hoping for that, keep banking on that. It's like, if Smith gets hurt again, then yes, you bring up Skinner and you split the starts a little more evenly. But
did either of you get the impression today that he's even in the market for a goalie?
Not at all.
Like, I mean, look, I listen to a ton of hockey media, right? And the very first thing that comes out of everybody's mouth when they're talking about the Oilers is goaltending. To me, it's just it's like he's deaf or blind. He can't see what's going on the ice, or, and he's not willing to listen to anybody else around him. Right.
Well, and what he talked about today too is we being second place in whatever division we played in the last 2 years with this tandem. Like, it's worked. Like, we can't argue with that overall team record result. It's been fine. Right?
So what do you guys think about he went on a little bit of a rant today, which, I'm prone to myself on occasion. But he was asked, about, the slump. He was asked about a lot of different things. And then he went on to, like he was making excuses for the team. He's in Toronto. We take the late penalty, but we were in that game. We've been in every, he basically ran through how many times we were in every game in this stretch of bad games. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Right? Like, that's the next, I joked about it earlier. That's going to be the next name of my Oilers podcast, right? Because, this is like to have it come from a guy who I think is as shrewd as Ken Holland is, for him to make excuses for the team, in my mind, right? Like, it's just, it's scary to me, right? Because if anything, I mean, there are two things we care about, right? And only one of them is good. We care about how many times we win and how many times we lose. And we really, as fans, we just want to win, right? Like, I read a lot of tweets today about, well, like you're saying, Ryan, like, we've been asking for a GM that will develop players for ages, and now we've got one and we're pissed off about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what changes that. What changes fans being pissed off about GMs and coaches? Winning. Right? Like, that is the only, honestly, I don't, people can bitch and complain about everything they want. Obviously, we can do that. It's our right as fans. And as Oilers fans, we exercise that right on a daily, if not second by second basis. But we care about one thing only, and that's winning. And when the team is winning, those fans typically go off. We are in Oilers land, so I remember in October when we were winning, there still seemed to be a fairly big contingent of negative fans. I was even called toxically positive at one point. But but anyway, I mean that's all that matters. Durso, what do you think about that? I mean, how does that make you feel about the GM, the state of the franchise, state of like Mike Tippett or Dave Tippett? Sorry, Dave Tippett's not going anywhere, right? We got that today. Dave Tippett's not going anywhere. Koskinen and Smith, they're not going anywhere. Skinner's not coming back. We're not looking for a goalie. We're likely very interested in Evander Kane. Did you hear anything today in, the excuses, everything in there that, made you hopeful for the prospects of this team today? Mr. Dursa.
I guess the one thing that Holland did say is it's a results-driven business. I think, he's extended some more rope to Tippett here, but if they don't start winning games, I can't see you hanging on to a coach with a roster you've basically overhauled in the summer, mostly the way you wanted it to be, other than I think a change in net.
It's the roster Tippett wanted. So if he's not winning with it, then there's a real problem.
I mean, according to Dash, that buys Tippett more time. To me, it buys them less because you've got the guys you wanted and you still can't make them win.
Now, Ryan, I'll give you the chance to go on that. I mean, there was a lot of excuses there today. You agree? I mean, he made a ton of excuses for the current slump.
Yeah, like he was talking about how close a lot of the games were, even if you go back to the Winnipeg series. I mean, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, right?
Yeah.
But I see what he's trying to do, and I love that he's trying to do it. It's the messaging is he believes in the team, and he's got full faith in them. He trusts them, right? That's what the players need, right? You can't fire everybody. You can't overhaul like 15 forwards because they're not putting up goals at even strength.
Yeah.
Right. You got to put your faith in the roster that you've built. And Ken Holland, like he said, he went all in, according to his words, this summer, trying to build a contender. So what's he going to say? Ooh, now suddenly my team is crap. Because we've lost a few games. Like he's got to have the messaging be positive, and or towards the players, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
He believes in this group, and I think he's optimistic that they can turn it around. We can be pessimistic to that, or kind of believe him. That's up to us. But you can't do a lot with his roster given his cap constraints. So maybe that's why this whole Kane stuff is coming on the scene, is because it's virtually a acquisition without any real major cost coming to it. You're $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever the deal ends up being. You kind of park tourists in the minors, and that pretty much takes care of it, right? So. And it's a one-off. If it works, great. You look like a hero. If it doesn't, well, you were already in the tank. So, nothing to lose. Kind of roll the dice on it and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I still think there's so many other challenges with that, but I mean, sure. I get what everybody's saying, right? Like it's not costing you anything. And we know right now. Well, I mean, it's still costing you $1.5 million. They got to figure that one out. If that's the actual figure that it comes out as. But I heard today one of the friends of the show from St. Louis suggested that Evander Kane, I'm not sure where he heard it, Evander Kane said he wouldn't play for the league minimum, so 1.5 sounds about right, if that's the case. of course, does he really have a does he have a choice at this point? Wood Guy put out a little stat thing. I don't know if you guys saw it today, but about PDO and the Oilers.
Yeah.
And hey, you know what? I love this because I think it's true, right? Like, you know, look, whether you believe in PDO or you don't believe in PDO or you're an analytics guy or not, I think you can believe in regressing to the norm, right? Like everybody kind of believes in that, and in some situations, you got peaks and you got valleys, right? And we've seen the extreme of both, like unbelievable on both sides of this team. The truth is, for this team, is likely somewhere in the middle. For me, the challenge with that is I don't want in the middle anymore. I want a team that's a little closer to the top end of that scale, and we're not. But you guys, as you said, you saw Wood Guy's tweet about PDO. Thoughts on that? Like, where do you think this team is, Ryan? If you're putting them in the, power rankings, but not based on the year to date, but like if the season were to start today and you see the makeup and composition of this team, knowing who they are, what their identity is, if they even know what their identity is. But where do you got this team? Is it on the top half? Are they a playoff team? I mean, we all think they are, but as of late, they haven't acted that way. Are they in the top half of those playoff teams? Should they win a round, or are they still a first round and exit type of team?
I think this team can win a round in the playoffs. I think this is the top 10 team in the league. I really do. Now, I came on this very podcast at the very start of the season, and I said that the Oilers would finish second in the division because they have some growing to do if they want to become an elite contender. And we're seeing a whole hell of a lot of that right now.
Yeah.
Right? They're not there yet, but they're on their way.
Is Tippett the guy? Is Tippett the guy to take them, to grow them to that? I mean, he's clearly, Holland saying, pointing to the regular season success record and says, look, he's done, this is what he's accomplished so far. And he's accomplished. I just think you got Draisaitl and McDavid. I say it with, a little tongue in cheek, but I could coach a Draisaitl and McDavid team into the playoffs, right? Like, that not many people are arguing they're in the, if you're not arguing Draisaitl's number 2 in the world, he's in the top 5, right? Like that's not the argument, right? Is never whether he's in the top 5 right now, and everybody agrees finally that McDavid's number 1. So isn't playoffs just table stakes for this team? Like, isn't that just sort of the expectation when you got those two guys?
100%. At this point, I have full faith that this is a playoff team. Like, even with the slump right now, the Oilers are always traditionally cold in December and January. That's just the way they run. And then they get hot in February and they get hot in March.
I hope you're
That's just the way they go, right? Is Tippett the guy? To be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know if he is or not. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know enough about systems to really criticize the system that he's employing. Now, there was something that he said recently that was kind of interesting to me, is that according to the fancy stats that he keeps, we're the top team in the league in terms of puck possession in the offensive zone.
Were these the numbers he was throwing out today? I couldn't I caught that, and I
this was probably last week.
Okay.
But and then in relation to what you were talking about, when guys post with the PDO, the save percentage was about the same at even strength throughout November and December, but the goals weren't coming. Right? Everybody's gone dry. I've actually been spending a lot of time this week going and I recently posted an article for Heavy Hockey using some fancy stats to try to figure out the best line combos for the Oilers.
Yeah.
I've taken that a step further, and I've specifically looked at the bottom 9 guys. So if there's a group of 9 at the absolute bottom of the roster, I was going through looking at their goals for, the goal share, and their scoring chance for percentages trying to see if there's any good pairings that work well together and that we can maybe form a few good lines with. And I wanted to really see if I could pinpoint who the problems are, right? Which combos aren't working? Are there guys that just should not be in the lineup? And I found a few combinations that could potentially work based on the numbers. So it's not as if these are all terrible hockey players and they can't do it. They just need to be put together in the right way. I mean, you could argue Tippett hasn't done that yet, and that's a strike against him. But there's a lot of good things happening that are underlying that we just aren't getting the results. They'll come. Holland's right. I think they'll come.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and good points. And by the way, great article. If you haven't had a chance, go to heavyhockey.com. I think it's the first one up right now. But check it out. That's by our very own Ron Lutzberg right there. Who else? So if you were right once before on the show, or you're so far so good, you said second in the division. Hopefully you're right about where the team's at now. Dursa, I mean, what are your thoughts here?
At the beginning of this season and kind of after the Winnipeg series last year, I kind of, in my head, wanted to give Tippett some rope and, Holland overhaul, kind of, bring in some new faces and change the team a little bit. And at the start of the season, I thought we were kind of a deeper team, definitely at forward. And I thought we improved our defense just a little bit, marginally. I am baffled that December was the train wreck that it was. And I don't know. Now I'm kind of in a spot where I don't know if Tippett really needs much more to show us. I think we've seen what he's all about. And I think it's almost a fait accompli that if we get into the playoffs and scrape our way in there, that we get bounced again in the first round. I'm not convinced he's the guy to kind of get you into multiple rounds of the playoffs. I don't want to be that pessimistic guy, but I was hoping that we would rip off the Band-Aid right now and get it over with and do a coaching change. I do think there's been a lot of changes of coaches and that can have an effect on people, but if it's not working, why keep trying it over and over again? It's Einstein's theory or definition of insanity.
Yeah. So you know what? I mean, you said something that's maybe impactful to me, which is, if he gets to the playoffs, right? If Dave Tippett survives this year and gets to the playoffs, then he, he's going to be. He's going to lose if he loses in the first round, right? The odds are then, right, by Holland's, record, right, is that's good enough to bring him back for another year, right? And to me, that's a failure. Like, it is a 100% failure for this team to be rocked out in the first round again. Right.
And I don't know if you guys saw this recently. I saw some tweets. I can't remember the sources now, but talking about the Oilers' internal budget and how that was a big reason that Keith is here right now, because while his cap is huge, his actual money owed is quite low. Right. So to fire Tippett right now and pay him out to do nothing and bring in another coach to pay him for part of the season, that I don't know that that's something that they really want to look at right now.
Yeah, and there's probably something to that, because I've heard stories about other things, right? Whether it's the in-house entertainment or other areas of the Oilers franchise, right, that struggle because of budget issues with the club, and we don't think about that. We just think, hey, go out there and pay what you can to get the best coach or the best whatever, right? And you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, there's probably something to that. There are in-house solutions to the Dave Tippett thing, right? And one of them sitting in Bakersfield, right? And and there's a couple of guys that have had been head coach for other teams in the league and are sitting in there right now. I don't know that they're going to be much different, but I still think you put somebody, and hey, they they had a bit of a winning streak when Tippett was gone, right? Like, not that I think Tippett still had his hands all over those games, but I'll belabor this point because this is something that just is driving me nuts this year, right? And this is what I see. Tippett's going to go. He's going to have another regular season that's a winning record. And we're going to say that's enough to keep him around. Well, Ken Holland's going to say that's enough. Like, he's been successful. Look at his winning record, right, in the regular season. And it doesn't matter what happens in the playoffs, and we're going to re-sign him. I watch tons of games. I watch lots of NHL around the league, right? And I like every time I'm watching, and they, are the guy, to the south of us, in Calgary, right? Like, you watch the broadcasters and the analysts, and they're talking about that's a Sutter coach team right there. That's a Mike Sullivan coach team, right? That's a Barry Trotz coach team. That's a Gallant coach team, right? Oh, you know what? Gallant's going to get these guys to the next step, right? Or he's going to do this because he's going to implement this. Or, Bednar, he learned from the last game, and this is what he's going to do now. I don't hear that when I'm watching the Oilers or when I'm listening to the media, right? There's no identity in this coaching staff on this team. And look, Tippett's got a great regular season history, right? And he's done something. Mike, you talked about it before. He's been able to take Arizona to a different, level than probably what they should have accomplished back in the day. Right? It's good. He's never, I think, you know what I think it is? I think it's as simple as he's not Scotty Bowman, right? He's not taking a couple of superstars and making the team around him great. I don't think he knows how to coach having a couple of superstars. He's got to defend. What were we worried about before he came? That he's going to, bring a defensive mindset to this team, right? But he's got a couple of guys that he can't do that with. And that's not his style. That's great. Maybe go send him over to another team that wants to play that way, right? But he might not be the right guy for McDavid and Draisaitl. And I'm not gonna change that thought process on him until he proves that otherwise, right? Like, to me, anything less than a win in the first round is failure for this team. All right. So that's my thoughts on that. Here, I said this was going to be a quick episode. You guys have listened to me rant for just about an hour now. I got really I got really heated after watching Holland today. When Holland was hired, I was a big fan. I still am, to be honest. The guy's got, like, as I said, if you are surprised by anything today, he said today, you haven't been listening, right? Like, this is who Holland is. He brought up Xavier Bourgault. He brought up prospects. He brought up developing teams. And when he talked about where this team is going, he brought up all those guys. And I think it's great, right? I think that's who Holland is. But I want him to get a little bit out of the way, right? And start to maybe listen to a few things around him, because this is not the Detroit Red Wings, right? We didn't start with, a whole cachet of young prospects in the mix that we're going to move up the rankings and make this team better in two years. We've got some serious development to do to get it there, and we're a little ways away from that. So I think that patience with maybe a little bit of a desire to make a couple moves, to me, would be good. All right, guys. Sorry for taking up the whole whole show today. We're gonna have a couple of last words. I'm gonna shut up. Ryan, you're not on that often. Mike, I get you on all the time, so we're gonna give Ryan the last words tonight. But Mike, your last words before we shut her down for the night.
Well, right now probably isn't the worst time to be a little bit patient. Not like we'd be dealing from a position of strength anyways. We're on a stinker of a run here. So, you know, there is some common sense to his approach today, I think. But I don't think you need swing for the fence kind of moves. You already have McDavid and Draisaitl. It might be just some little peripheral moves that kind of improve the club. If they do go out and snag Evander Kane, that is a major shakeup. That's not a peripheral move. That is an earthquake you're putting into the locker room. And you know, maybe McJesus can save this guy. I don't know. Maybe he's beyond redemption. I don't know the answer to that, but it'll definitely be a test of the strength of the leadership group we keep hearing isn't a problem. So yeah,
we saw some pictures today. They were all smiles. It's a moment in time, but they looked like they were happy. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, it rarely is the cancer in the room ever the cancer in the room, right? I mean, that's, I think, you know, these guys are, yeah. Anyway, I
guess my last word, Mike, will be that I don't ever want to hear about how much of a cancer Taylor Hall was in the room if they go and bring in Evander Kane.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you 100% on that. Shannon, by the way, on Facebook says we're a 3-game win streak away from loving Tip, Koski, and Holland. He's 100% right. Okay, Ryan, so this is how we do it. I don't know if how long you've been listening for, but I give you the last word. When you're done, you got to close me off by saying good night. I don't say anything, which is incredibly hard for me, by the way. This is more a test of my patience, and I'm not as patient as Ken Holland is. So that's how it works. I'm giving you full reign. Say what you want. Say Oilerslive is shit, or, you know, tell the truth and say how great it is and how much you love being on the show. But say whatever you want, and then when you're done, you got to say goodnight. I hit the end screen, and we're out of here. Your last words for tonight.
All right. Well, obviously, it's been a terribly frustrating losing streak. It's been awful, terrible, unacceptable, all of those things. Fans have every right to be frustrated and angry, right? But like, we got to remember, like, these are all emotional responses to a frustrating situation, right? What do we really want Holland to come out and say? The team hasn't been good enough. This roster sucks. I did a terrible job of constructing it. No, that's not what he's going to say at all. You got a team that's not feeling very confident in themselves at all right now. You got a team that's struggling. And Ken Holland believes in the team that he built. And that's the message that he gave them today. And I think that's the absolute right message, and that's the absolute right strategy. Especially with this generation of players, you don't yell and scream at them and tell them how terrible they are to get them to fix whatever's the issue. You got to give them faith. They have to be involved in the decision-making process, right? They need to be feeling valued, and that's the message that I got from Ken Holland today. And I think that's the exact right message. Now, as far as trades go, we've seen him make moves at the deadline to add in each season that he's been here. Like, hey, at Athanasiou, it didn't work out, but he added at the deadline. Kulikov, it didn't work out, but he added at the deadline. So let's not rule out any sort of trade. As Mike said, we only really need support, depth, periphery moves. We don't need the Evander Kane deal, as awesome as it might be for the roster. I also agree with Mike. The optics on that are terrible. And Evander Kane could probably spend some time away from hockey to reevaluate his life. That would be great. But all in all, the state of the Oilers right now sucks, but it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Patience is everybody's least favorite word in Edmonton, but I think it's needed. We're on the right track. It's just been a bad 5 weeks, as that's going to fall on deaf ears, but that's just the way it is. So anyways, on behalf of the two Mikes and myself, thanks for tuning in, everybody. It was a pleasure to be here, Michael. Are you happy now? I hope you're happy now. With that, I'll say good night and thanks for watching, and let's go Oilers.